Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me on The Griot. I am your host, Marc Lamont Hill. She is a comedian, an actress, a writer, and a producer. But Amanda Seales isn't satisfied with just making people laugh. She also wants to make a change. Tonight, we're going to spend the hour with a woman who does everything intellectual, artistic, and creative and political. She is the brilliant, wonderful Amanda Seales. Amanda, welcome to The Griot.
Hello. Speaking of change, as I'm sitting here looking at myself, I realize I want to change my earrings. So we can continue the interview, but I'm going to change the earrings while we're
You can just keep on rolling. It's good. It's okay. Keep rolling. Change the earring. Talk to me about first of all, what are you up to right now? I turned on the radio and heard your voice.
I know. What I'm up to is my syndicated radio show, The Amanda Seales Show. And it's like very exciting because it's the first time that I've had something that was completely of my vision, but that was backed by a bigger company, right? So Radio One, Reach Media, Urban One, they are the folks that I've partnered with to make this syndicated show happen. And it's really just been a great experience working with them because they treat you like a partner. They treat you as a partner. You know, they respect my mind. They respect what I bring to the table. And since we've started, it's a new venture for me because I've never done syndicated radio. So it definitely is like a learning curve in that regard, but we're already in 7 cities. We started in Philly in November and we've expanded to Houston, Charlotte, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, Toledo, Richmond, Columbus, Ohio, and we, look forward to expanding to more cities. So it's really been a great time so far. And it's a show where I get to give people laughs and facts in the same space, which I feel like is not as common as we would like it to be in the media space.
I was going to say, I mean, that's the great thing about you in general, but especially on this show is you get to do all the things. Is it a different preparation for you now that every single day you get up to talk about current events, you got to talk about politics, and you are talking about pop culture stuff? I mean, is that a different preparation for you?
I thought it was going to be. Like, I really was like, this is going to be very strenuous and you need to like start working out your brain. And I even started doing like a thing on my Instagram where I would do like Amanda and the headlines ahead of time because I was trying to train myself to be able to like, every day be up for it. But honestly, it's really been very natural because I think ultimately I'm always looking at this type of stuff anyway. Like I'm a kind of in the know person, and my Smart, Funny, and Black Productions, like our group chat is oftentimes just like stories about things that are going on in the zeitgeist, things that are going on in the news, politically, socially, what random dude with a podcast is saying some hot take that we all gonna be upset about this week. It's like these things are kind of always already in my orbit. So it really just allows me to, on my show, be able to take the things that I would normally be talking about insularly or, the one topic I may talk about on my podcast or on my Instagram. Now I can talk about an array of things in this one area. And for folks who aren't in any of those cities that I named, they can listen to the Amanda Seales Show every day on podcast. So wherever you get your podcast, you just type in the Amanda Seales Show and you'll get that day's show.
That's dope. Speaking of random people with podcasts, there's a whole world out there of people who say the wildest stuff, the most misogynistic stuff, the most racist stuff, the most unfactual stuff around vaccines, around reproduction, around all that stuff. Do you feel a responsibility when you do your show to kind of respond to them or kind of push back against them, or is the best thing to do to kind of ignore them and pretend they don't exist?
It depends on the person. I think there's definitely a certain level of you can't be too silent or else you're complicit, and you're enabling. So I do think there's a certain level of that. But I think in general, I try to address things from an information base that counters whatever those individuals are saying. So even though there may be an individual saying something, a lot of times it's not even necessary to address that individual as much as it is to address the larger point that they were trying to make or that they were failing to make, right? Now, at a certain point, it's like, how many times can we respond to the single-digit IQ fodder that Marjorie Taylor Greene gives us every day? I don't have enough time in my show to keep
Word.
dedicating time to this fool. Same with, 45. Like, I don't want to hear his voice. Like, I don't want to keep giving him airtime. So you have to be choosy about what you're going to acknowledge and what you're going to just let go, because these are people that make a business out of this. They're grifters, right? So at a certain point, if you keep acknowledging the grifter, you are actually feeding the grift.
I can see that. What's been the toughest thing that you've had to? You talked about the learning curve. What's been the toughest thing you've had to learn about hosting a daily show?
I mean, I think just the format of radio, right? Like, I do a podcast, Small Doses, and we've been doing Small Doses podcast for 5 years. And, on a podcast, you're just talking. You on the mic, you talking. And I have my podcast is like in my blood at this point, since we've been doing it so long. I mean, I turned it into a book, and it's really more about like self-help, and we have interviews. Whereas radio has a specific format. You're going to do a specific number of breaks. They need to be a specific a time. You have to think about it in a holistic way, differently than you would think about a podcast, because with a podcast, you're thinking about it just episodically. Whereas with a radio show, you're thinking about it over the course of 4 hours, as well as over the course of 5 days. And so format wise, that's been the change for me. But like, I'm a creative. So like, I feel like it's been a cool, like, even though it's a learning curve, it's just been cool to like teach this old dog new tricks.
You say that you are creative, and I always tell everybody, I say Amanda is like the most talented person that I know. It's actually kind of, I'm serious. It's actually kind of weird, because you just know how to do everything. And if you don't know how to do everything, you just like learn how to do it. Like, I remember when you were about to start doing comedy, you're like, I'm going to do the stand-up thing. And then next thing I know, like, you're on HBO. Like, what was that journey like in particular? Like, talk to me about the comedy part of it first.
Yeah. The comedy part was really like something that I realized was missing, that was my skeleton key to like open all the doors that I felt like I couldn't open. And it still pains me that to this day, people like may not even know me as a comic, even though I be on that stage and I have my own stand-up special, I be knowing, and I've done tours, etc. But ultimately, that's how I see myself as a comic. And that became the case when I left the music business around like 2012. And I started seeing, okay, where do I go next? What's like the next space? And I know that I want to be somewhere where my voice can have value. And I also knew that career-wise, I needed to like chart a course. And when I was looking around at like different folks to model that after, I looked at somehow like there became this connection between Chelsea Handler, Ellen DeGeneres, and Chris Rock. And you're like, how the heck all those three people come in the same space? Well, it was because all of them had managed to create a multimedia like empire, so to speak, out of their point of view. So it wasn't based on, it played on a TV show. It wasn't based on a film they were in. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't based on a group that they were a part of. They were able to make movies, TV, books, hosting, all of these things off of just their opinion, the way that they express themselves in that space. And when I looked at all the things that they did, I did everything they did but stand up. And I was like, maybe. And I mean, it was hypothetical, right? It was like, maybe if I do stand up and I'm really good at it, it will provide the kind of like the umbrella for people to really understand what I'm about. Because like, as you know, like, people would always tell me stuff like, it's kind of like you do everything but like nothing, like you're able to do all these things, but we don't really know what to do with you. And so that was a very frustrating time. And then when I started doing stand-up, very, very quickly, I realized like, oh, this is the right thing. This is the right thing. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Almost like when I went through a nervous breakdown and my therapist was like, you should try boxing. And the first hit against the coach's training pad, I was like, oh, this is the right thing. This is the right thing.
When you did that hit, did you imagine somebody?
Of course. You know who I imagined.
Okay. Now you know what?
No, y'all got to know Mark is my like actual friend. Like we're here being very professional, but we are ridiculous people. And I will say, I love the fact that we get to be here as friends and do interviews with each other about just like the dopeness that we're achieving. Because as Black folks in this business, we all we got is us, and not enough of us know that.
Yo, that is so real, man. You know, you're one of my best friends in the whole world, and like to sit here even with my serious face and serious voice to be able to ask you these questions, which I'm gonna become ridiculous by the end of the show, I'm sure, because that's just who we are. But like it does feel really good, and to just see where you are right now, it just gets me so. I just get so filled with pride. So anyway, we're gonna talk for the whole show. Everybody, stay right here. We got much more with the legendary Amanda Seales right after this break. Welcome back to the Griot and our special hour with the talented Amanda Seales, the comedian, the author, the producer, the podcast host, the woman that does it all. Also, she starred in the HBO series Insecure. Can't leave that out. Amanda, let's take a step back for a minute, because I think some people don't appreciate how long you've been in this business. You know, they say it takes like a whole lifetime to be an overnight success. And some people think Insecure was the moment, or maybe the HBO special was the moment. But your career starts so wow. That's right. She got a SAG card. When did you get that SAG card?
Since '94. That's what I was trying to show you, but it was blurry. SAG since '94, y'all. '94.
'94. What was happening in '94?
In '94, I was on the Nickelodeon show My Brother and Me. It was basically the first Black show of Nickelodeon's '90s era. I mean, of course, after that came similar at the same time, we had All That and Gullah Gullah, and then after that came Keenan and Kel and Cousin Skeeter, and just ended up continuing to grow. But my Brother and Me was a show that really just was great because it showed just like a Black family in North Carolina and their friends, and it didn't have a lot of bells and whistles. It just had great family stories, and the creator actually went on to be a part of the creative team for the Proud Family. And it just goes to show that like Calvin Brown Jr., like he just has a real mind for Black families and really showing us in a special and protective light, because that was the reason why why do I keep saying Smart Funny and Black? That was the reason why My Brother and Me didn't continue beyond one season, was because he felt like the powers that be wanted him to make the characters more, I guess, cartoonish. And he was just like, nah, like they don't need to do all of that. Like, this is what it is, and the people like it. So why change it? But it was very like, how do we make him more JJ? How do we make the characters more JJ in Good Times? And he just wasn't willing to write Dynamite into the script.
I'm so glad, because we don't need no more JJs. We don't need no more Urkels. We need strong, interesting, normal Black characters.
Yeah.
And you definitely, you know what I'm saying? And you did that. How did you know that this was the life for you? There's a million kids out there whose parents like, my baby need to be on commercials, my baby need to be on screen. But you really were that kid. How did you know? How'd your mom know? Like, what was the deal with that?
I mean, I really feel like I was just always demanding attention, and not in like a please pay attention to me, but in the way that I was in a room. Like I was either performing or I was pontificating about something at like 6 years old. I mean, I remember distinctly, I had this routine that I had created, and it was Michael Jackson singing the Star Spangled Banner. And that became like the parlor trick that my mom would like whip out, like, man, do Michael singing the Star Spangled Banner, do Michael. And like, I don't know where that came from. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just had this very imaginative mind. Like when kids came over to play, it wasn't just like, oh, we're going to play Barbies. It was like, no, like we're going to do a Barbie wedding, and there's going to be a whole like storyline, and there's going to be a narrative, you know? And so I think my mom just kind of early on picked up on the fact that I was presenting in a more advanced way as like a creative. Also, I will say that my uncles all had bands. So like my mom like grew up with like siblings that were very creative and like advanced in how they were going to present that early on. And so I think when it came to me, she was like, all right, well, let's take the bull by the horns. And so she took me to my first audition when I was 8, and I ended up booking it that day. And then from there, we were able to speak to other parents, and my mom was able to get more information. And like, I enjoyed the work. I mean, I think if I was very like petulant about it and was like, I don't want to do this, like, I don't feel like it, like, there was no like momager situation happening. But I think my brother and me was a real turning point too, because my mom, unlike the other parents, my mom was working. So she would just drop me off and go to work. So it's like she dropped me off at work and she going to work. And I would be there, you know, in the care of all these adults, of course. But at the end of the day, it's still like me as a 12-year-old and 13-year-old, like taking care of myself in this space. And I was not the kind of kid that would shy away from keeping it a buck about my feelings. So like, if I did not like that, I would have not only told her, but I would remember right now as an adult. And for me, it was actually very, because you know, I'd be in therapy talking about it. But for me, it was actually like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, this is natural. And then I went on to do theater, and I was in a performing arts magnet, and you know, just it's always
how'd you
like,
remain normal though? Like, because that's the thing. I meet so many kids who start doing that at 8 and 9, and they're almost all weirdos. They're almost all in some kind of weird social trouble. They're all in rehab. You know, and you're like the most normal, like, child actor, child star that I know. How did you manage to stay as normal as you are?
I think because I stayed in school. I wasn't tutored. So, I mean, I will tell you, like, I wasn't at the level of child stars like someone like a Raven Simone or Raven Simone or a you know, Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus. Like, these were kids that were like on set all day, and they were like the stars of their show. And I mean, I can't imagine what that must have been like. I mean, though I was in the mix and I was doing the work and I was having to pay taxes at 9, it was still very much contextualized for me as this is your extracurricular activity. Like, for instance, great example. So when I was on My Brother and Me, I was only supposed to be on 2 episodes. And at the same time that I was doing My Brother and Me, I was also a gymnast, and I was going through a very like important transition gymnastics wise, where I was going from being a compulsory gymnast to an optional level gymnast. And that's like a very big jump, because it's kind of like going from like kiddie gym to like on the path to, you know, college or the Olympics type thing. So I was making that jump at the same time, same summer that I'm doing My Brother and Me. So My Brother and Me says, you know what, we really like Amanda. We'd like to actually keep her on the entire season. And my mom had also planned a trip with me and my aunt. My aunt and I were supposed to go to Hawaii, like with her and her husband's family. And I think most parents would have been like, I guess you're not going to Hawaii now. And
Yeah.
in contrast, my mom was like, all right, so she's going to miss 2 episodes because she'll be in Hawaii. And I think that was never verbalized to me as like, this is the thing that we're going to do. But I think just by receptors of, you know, and just by being like a kid that was aware, it was like, oh, like, this is just as important as this. And I never was told that like my value was based on my success in television. I think for a lot of kids, they feel that way. Also, like, my mom was working. I never had the burden of like, now I am the moneymaker for my family. And that's what a lot of these kids end up having to be.
Everybody stay right here. We got more with Amanda Seales, and we're going to play a little game called This or That. Welcome back to the Griot. Amanda Seales is here with us for the entire hour, and she's been talking to us about her career in lots of stages. Also, you're getting a lot of her brilliant insights on the world, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Amanda, some of your brilliant insights on the world right now. You know, we're about to go into an election season again, particularly like a 2024 presidential election season. Do you feel like people are sufficiently prepared and energized and ready?
I feel like if I'm being optimistic, I feel like we're better prepared than we were in the past election cycle. You know, like, people were very upset with me in the last election cycle because I was like, all right, well, we got in because we were down to the wire and we only had 2 options. And so, you know, I'll still have people to this day be like, see, you told us to vote for Biden. Now, for what it's worth, Biden has actually not been a complete failure. And I know some people might say, like, well, what kind of bar is that? Well, if you look at presidents as we've had them, that's actually a pretty impressive bar, okay? Because there's been a lot of failure. So when we look at the grand scheme of things, back then, as in like 2020, people were really like frustrated with Biden being the only option, but had not really committed themselves to being a part of the process from the beginning. And I think that was a real wake up call for folks. And I think this go round, we are going to see a lot more conversation, a lot more involvement with the actual candidacy process from the beginning, for primaries, et cetera, versus, okay, now we got a Republican and now we got to choose. And so I think there's been a lot of really excellent education that's been happening by people like yourself, right, over the past years, in the importance of local voting, and not just like that as a buzzword, but that in like an actual practical way, like this is how it affects you, and the importance of actually being a part of the process as a part of your lifestyle. Like, I think a lot of people think that our civic engagement is, kind of something you dip in and out of as things ramp up, and we have to at least make an effort to really become like civically engaged on a regular basis. It needs to be a part of our lifestyle. It needs to be a part of our culture. If Black people in this nation want to utilize voting in a real way as a part of a multi-pronged approach for liberation and revolution, then it cannot be just something we dabble in. Our civic involvement has to be something that is culturally a part of us.
It's interesting. You use the word liberation and the word culture. One of the things I see happening on social media a lot of times is people talk about liberation for Black folk only in the context of people who are the direct descendants of American slavery. And I also see people talk about culture and only thinking about sort of Black American culture to the exclusion of folk from the Caribbean. What do you make of these sort of diaspora wars that are sometimes happening between people who are considered foundational Black Americans or American descendants of slavery and people from the continent of Africa and the Caribbean who's in some circles are seen as not us enough?
It always comes back to white supremacy and the divide and conquer tactic and its effectiveness. There's really been a lot of effort made to disconnect folks from their heritage, and that effort has been very effective. And so so basically the kickback of that, what ends up happening is that people then become hyper protective, right? They become over conscious, in my mind, of like their protectiveness to the point where they're sounding like their oppressor. So there's a certain level of conversation that happens amongst folks that really want to make sure that foundational Black Americans are getting the reparations that are deserved, the remunerations that are deserved, the attention, the historical advocacy that is deserved. There's a certain group of folks that take that to a point of exclusionism and ostracizing of other Black folks in the diaspora who are an actual part of that. I think it's very unrealistic to consider Blackness in this country in one way. We talk about the monolith all the time, and there's a very real historical representation of the fact that monolith doesn't just exist amongst foundational Black Americans, but exists amongst means to be Black in America. And we are a unique place. And I feel like the sooner we can, put our war, weapons down and actually identify each other as, we are different of the same, we have more troops to fight with. Which is exactly what happened when they brought Haitians to fight in the Civil War.
That's a great point. By the way, these historical tidbits that Amanda's dropping aren't just because she listens to a lot of podcasts and reads. You also have a master's degree in African American studies from the Columbia University. Again, like, most people don't know that piece of your life. What made you do that in the middle of making, amazing art, making culture, working? What made you want to go get a fancy Ivy League master's degree?
You funny, fancy. I literally had a professor that I really trusted and that was very just a grounding force for a lot of folks on campus. He just walked up to me one day and was like, "You need to go get your master's because you're going to change the world and you're going to need it to change the world." And I was like, "What? Like, I don't want to go." But like, someone says that to you and you're somebody who really feels like the world needs to change, then you're going to be like, fine. So
So, with that master's degree, do you feel like you can kick my ass?
I was like, I know something dumb is coming. Like, I know it. Like, I'm watching it. I'm watching it gear up. This doctorate over here. Like, I'm watching it gear up. At one point, I really wanted to go get a doctorate just so people would call me Dr. Diva. Because my name
I really need you to do that. I need you to do that. Seriously. You know what? I got some plans. I'll tell you offline, but I got some ideas for you to do that. Everybody stay right here. Soon to be Dr. Amanda Diva is going to come back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. We're here at the Griot with Amanda Seales. She's the author of Small Doses, Potent Truths for Everyday Use and Young Skin, Wise Mind, and Old Soul. We got a couple things to run over real quick. One is this book. It's in paperback. It's amazing. It's doing really well for the last couple of years. What made you want to write this book?
I'm the kind of person where, like, if an opportunity arises that makes sense, like, I'll take it. At the time, I had an agent who was like, hey, do you want to write a book? And I was like, sure. And it took me a couple different iterations before we landed on this as the book. And it was based on the podcast, because I really had people telling me that they wanted the lessons and the thoughts and, kind of ethos that I was saying in the podcast. They wanted to be able to like reference it in a very quick way without having to go to the podcast. And so I said, well, what better way to do that to put it in a book? And the book itself is laid out in a unique way. And it's kind of for the purpose of reference versus like reading it front to back. You can kind of just go to where you want and get the information you need. And there's a number of different sections in there that I think a lot of folks relate to. We have a section on being a woman. We have a section on glowing up. There's a section on just career, etc. And it really is my musings and my thought processes on all of these things. And it's not meant to be like, this is the Bible according to Amanda. It's more meant to just inspire folks to, as prompts, so to speak, in their own lives, to think about things in a different way, or to challenge their thinking, or to say, oh, wait, that's something I agree with. Because I think the one thing people tell me a lot is that I can put into words things that they're thinking but haven't been able to express.
That's a good way to put it. And I think you do that with your comedy too. What's smart, funny, and black? People hear that and they don't know exactly what it is sometimes. They're like, is it a game show? Is it a comedy show? Is it theater? What is it?
It's really all the above. Smart, funny, and black is a Black culture comedy game show, variety show. We are always in the presence of a live band. We are a stage show. We have not gone to television yet because I guess the revolution will not be televised. And every show, we have two Black folks come on and they compete in games that I have created that test their knowledge of Black culture, Black history, and the Black experience. And comedy is always at the root, and music. So when you come to a Smart Funny and Black show, the vibe is like something you've never experienced, and that is by design. It is a combination of an HBCU homecoming, a revival, and a cookout. You're gonna do the electric slide. You're gonna sing, lift every voice and sing. You might even take over for the 99s and the 2000s. Like you're gonna do all of that at the same time. You're gonna learn about Black history. You're gonna laugh about our Black experience, and you're going to share in culture and community. And I always tell people, like, you can come to a Smart Funny and Black show by yourself. You're going to leave with friends. So we actually have our first show of the year in LA on May 18th, and those tickets are on sale. So you can go to amandaseals.com and get your tickets. And we'll be, of course, doing more shows as the year proceeds, but that's going to be our first show of the year, May 18th. And I'm really excited to continue. We've been doing the show since 2016. It started off in a different iteration, and it became this, and we've been able to grow it. And we sold out the Kennedy Center last year, and we hope to continue to see it grow this year.
And you're going to be on comedy tour too.
Yeah, so I'm at this point right now where I'm planning my next comedy special. I've decided to do it independently instead of waiting for these networks to figure it out. I really feel like at this point, that's kind of the best route for a lot of us comics, is just to do things on our own if we can. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm partnering with Jesse Collins, who is the producer that you've seen put together the Super Bowl halftime show. He produced the Grammys, and he produced my last special, I Be Knowin'. So we are teaming up again to put together my next special, and hopefully I'll be able to get that out to the people by the fall, and then I will go tour immediately after that. But in the meantime, I will have dates. It's just, I'm really trying to do things, Mark, in a much more strategic fashion. And I feel like up until this point, I've been really like, kind of just doing stuff as I see fit, like whatever. And it's like, okay, you can't, like, energy wise, like I can't even be that loose. I mean, we were also in a pandemic, so there's that.
There is that too. Now, obviously, a lot of us loved you as Tiffany on Insecure, and we're thinking about your next role. Now that you've been on an iconic show that people watch and love and quote and do all of that, does it make it harder for you to choose the next role? Are you like, does it raise the bar for you, the standard of what you'll accept?
I mean, I guess it should, right? What really makes it hard is that I don't like filming. I don't like being somewhere for 16 hours. Like, filming is not an efficient practice as like a standard. And so I would need to be on a show where I know that we're going to get out at a certain time. Like, I need to have that kind of like certainty. And I just haven't experienced that on a lot of sets. And so that's what's made me actually become very like tentative about getting back on another show. Whereas like what I love about the radio show, the Amanda Seales show, I record the Amanda Seales show from home, and I'm able to bring people into my world and do what needs to get done in an efficient fashion, like my type A self loves to do. And so that's like where my focus is right now. Now, if a great opportunity came up, like if Abbott Elementary hit me up, like, what am I going to say? No, of course. I'm going to be like, Quinta, tell me where to go. If the Wonder Years hit me up, I'd be like, tell me where to go. But I also just sold my own show. And I can't tell y'all like any more details than that, but I did sell.
I was going to say, we're going to get the scoop on this. You're going to tell the people what the show is, or we just going to wait for it?
You're going to wait for it because, there's a very long process when you sell a show. You sell the show, then you got to write the show. They got to like what you wrote. Then they got to make a pilot. They got to like the pilot. Then they got to make the show. So there's a lot of steps. But hopefully, you all will get to see me star in that show. And so fingers crossed.
Oh. We're gonna put that out in the universe. We are going to see that show. The show is going to be dope. I just asked to have one guest appearance. I'll be a janitor. I'll be whatever. I don't care. I just want one appearance where I'm not playing a TV journalist. Every job I've ever gotten on TV is playing a TV journalist. It doesn't feel like acting.
No, you're going to be a rapper. You're absolutely going to be a rapper.
Oh, thank you. See, this you get me.
It could be like you and Boyce Watkins doing like a Ren 10-10 situation. No?
You gonna get me? Yo, I clowned Boyce Watkins like 2 or 3 weeks ago when Dyson was on here, and the whole little Hotep Twitter went nuts. So now I'm sure it's gonna happen again. Now, Boyce Watkins, by the way, Boyce Watkins does have a rap song though. It's called "When I Rise." Y'all should Google it. It is something.
It's a rap song.
That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, everybody stay here. Welcome back to the Griot. If you are just tuning in, we've been spending the hour with Amanda Seales, and we have one more round of this or that. This time, it's not the nerd route, it's the comedy route. And this time it has to be rapid fire, so all I can do is get your responses, no explanations. First one, Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock?
Rock.
Eddie Murphy or Bernie Mac?
Murphy.
That's too easy. Richard Pryor or Red Fox?
Pryor.
Samore or Leslie Jones?
Oh. Some more.
Tiffany Haddish or Monique?
Haddish.
And Wanda Sykes or Cheryl Underwood?
Wanda. These are tough though because. Go. No, what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead. I went 6 for 6. I knew exactly what you were gonna say for each one. Only one gave me a little hesitation, but other than that, I was like, boom, boom, boom. I already know what you're gonna say. What was you gonna say? What were you gonna say though?
Well, because I think some of these, it's like the person I know versus someone I don't know, right? So it's gonna be a combination of also not just their like comedy as a stand-up, but their comedy as a performer, and then like how they show up in the world, right? So that
totally makes sense. Everybody stay with us. We have a final word from Amanda right after this quick break. All right, family, we have reached the end of the show, but before I let y'all go, normally I get the last word. I give this minute and 20 seconds to myself to say what I'm thinking and feeling in the world, but I am going to instead yield that time to the legendary Amanda Seales, who has a word for the people. Amanda, what you got to tell the people in a minute and 20 seconds?
The word I would like to tell the people is that we are the ones who have to save ourselves. I think that there's a lot of conversation that happens around the internet, particularly where we as Black folks are splintered as a community. And I say splintered versus diverse, because when I think of diverse, I think of unique pockets of a larger community that can actually understand that there's going to be uniqueness and know when to work together. Splintered feels more violent. It feels painful because, of course, we know that when something splinters, it creates splinters. It's jagged on the edge, so it makes it hard to come together. But we have to come together. And I know that sounds very like kumbaya, but what it means is that we, especially in a nation that is making such an effort to erase not only our past, but our present, it is imperative that we begin to yell the truth and support each other in doing so. And so that happens with your artists, that happens with your activists, your organizers, that happens with media that is responsible and that understands that it is imperative to tell the truth. And it happens with you even in your own spaces.
Amen.
So I always say we are each other's business. When we look out for each other, we lift each other up.
Amen, amen, amen. I co-sign everything Amanda just said.